Hello and welcome to MTGology for this week's Modern Brew Night. Now, I'd just like to point out before we begin that I am using MTG Goldfish. It's a pretty neat site, but I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just like to use it. It's got all the prices on it, and I can show you the pictures of the cards, so it's handy to use. But moving forward, so this week's brew is Blue-White Flyers. And I call this like Brew Night because these decks, they're not going to win you the Pro Tour. I mean, who knows? Maybe they will, but I'm not guaranteeing anything. And so to start off, this deck's based around using flyers. Obviously, it's mostly all cheap spells. You can see you got a lot of 1-drops, a couple really only 1-2-drop, 2-3 drops, and 1-4 drop, and only 20 lands. And I might even move that down a little bit depending on how you like to play. But to get into it, the first card is Fairy Miscreant. It's just a 1-drop, 1-1 flying blue. And when it enters the battlefield, if you control another creature named Fairy Miscreant, you get to draw a card. So on its own, doesn't really do much. To 1-1 flyer, little body, it's hard to block obviously because that's flying. But if you happen to draw another one, you have two or three in your opening hand, it gets you some extra value. The next card is Hope of Geoper. It's a 1-1 legendary creature, artifact creature, Thopter, and it's again 1-1 flyer, and you can sacrifice it. And it says until your next turn, target player who was dealt combat damage by Hope of Geoper this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So this is useful if you're playing against like a control deck, you don't want them to counter something. You could attack them first and then cast your spell after sacrificing this, or just to kind of shut out your opponent depending on what you're playing. This next card is Hypnotic Siren, and in 99.9% of your games, this is going to be again another 1-1 flyer for 1. But it does have that ability. If you went really late game somehow and someone's throwing down a huge creature, beating you down with it, and you somehow got to 7 lands, it has the Bestow ability where you can enchant a creature and gain control of it. So if someone's attacking you with some big Eldrazi, you can just take it and win the game with it. Next two cards kind of do it at the same time, and they'll do the same thing. So Judge's Familiar, it's a 1-drop, 1-1 flying again. And you can sacrifice it to counter target instant or sorcery spell unless the controller pays 1. So that's useful if someone's trying to board wipe you, unless it's Supreme Verdict, obviously. Or if you're trying to use kill spells, kill one of your better flyers, you can sacrifice this guy or Mausoleum Wanderer, who's going to do the same thing in this deck to prevent that from happening. And it could also slow down your opponent, because your opponent obviously sees that you have the Judge's Familiar. So it might just make them wait an extra turn to be able to cast something. But you're going to be able to use that to get in more damage, get an extra combat step. And there's no other spirits in this deck, so Mausoleum Wanderer is pretty much always going to be a 1-1, because it says whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, he gets +1/+1 to the end of turn. And rather than just sacrificing it and countering something unless they pay 1, it counters an instant sorcery unless they pay X, where X is Mausoleum Wanderer's power. And where that can be handy is a couple different situations. One is with this card, Signal Pest. Now, Signal Pest doesn't actually technically have flying, but it can't be blocked except for by creatures with flying or reach. And it has Battle Cry. So whenever this creature attacks, each other creature you control gets +1/+0 until the end of turn. So that's going to beef up all your other little flyers. So, I mean, if you have tons of little creatures, it's better to do 2 damage per creature than 1. It's actually going to add up pretty fast. And that's going to beef up your Mausoleum Wanderer, so you can counter something unless they pay 2. Also, we'll talk about the Mausoleum Wanderer. Another way to beef that up is with the Thunderclap Wyvern. And Thunderclap Wyvern is a 4-mana 2/3 flash. It costs 1 white, 1 blue, and 2 colorless. Flying, again, obviously. And it says other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. So since this flash has a neat kind of tool, you can cast it before combat damage, and maybe if they're trying to counter it, you can sacrifice your Judge's Familiar or your Mausoleum Wanderer to prevent that from happening and still get it down to play. And if it does resolve, then your Mausoleum Wanderer is going to be a little bit bigger. And so since it'll be consistently a 2/2, it's going to be even harder for them to cast instant and sorcery spells. Also, we're going to jump ahead a little bit. We got Favorable Winds. It's a 2-mana blue enchantment. Creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. And that's, again, good for the Mausoleum Wanderer. That's going to, it's good for everything, but especially Mausoleum Wanderer, since you're going to be able to counter things unless they pay more and more mana. Now, going back to order, you got Aven Mimomancer. It's 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 white, 3/1 flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a feather counter on target creature. If you do, that creature is a 3/1 and has flying for as long as the feather counter is on it. Now, this is going to slowly kind of make your guys bigger. So the Thunderclap Wyvern, let's say you have that on the battlefield, it's going to give everything +1/+1. but that's going to add on top of the feather counters. So if you have a fairy miscreant and you put a feather counter on it, making it a 3/1, and then you put the thunderclap wyvern down, now that's going to be a 4/2. So it's kind of, but it's only once per turn, so it's slowly going to increase your board's damage. Now spells, there's only a couple spells in there for instants and sorceries, but Path to Exile I think is basically unnecessary. I mean, you don't know what your opponent's gonna be playing. If you're playing against another aggro deck that might be a little bit faster than you, you're gonna need to stop whatever they're playing, whether it be Tarmogoyfs or you're playing against, who knows, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you just gotta be able to get rid of it. The next card is Proclamation of Rebirth, and this card is very important because in a lot of decks they're gonna have, some decks have a lot of removal. You're playing against like Jund, they got lightning bolts, you know, they got all kinds of stuff, damnation, maelstrom pulse, abrupt decay, and they're gonna be able to kill all your small little dudes pretty fast, especially because they don't have a lot of higher power and toughness. And so for only 3 mana at sorcery speed, you can return up to 3 creature cards with convert mana cost 1 or less from your graveyard to play. And another reason is that really handy is because of that Judge's Familiar and the Mausoleum Wanderer, where you sacrifice to counter something. Now you can get them back and do it again. And we already talked about favorable winds, and that's all the spells in the deck and creatures. Now we're going to lands. You got 4 Flooded Strands, 4 Glacial Fortresses, 4 Hallowed Fountains, 7 Islands, and 1 Plains. It's mostly islands because pretty much all the 1-drops require like an island to play, so you don't want to be stuck playing a plains on turn 1. But you still obviously need white mana for the upper spells. Now the problem with this deck is, because this is kind of a fun deck, you know, play your local FNM, get you started, but this deck is $147 on paper, and most of that is because of lands and because of Path to Exile. So to prevent that, I made a budget version, which is mono blue. And so looking at the mono blue one, it's a little bit weaker, but it's only $17 on paper. And so to get a beginning of it, it's almost exactly the same. You got the Fairy Miscreant, Hope of Giapur, Hypnotic Siren, Judge's Familiar, Mausoleum Wanderer, Signal Pest, but then you got Augriel. And Augriel is almost kind of a supplement for a fetch land. So the fetch land, one of its like good uses is that, one, you can get the specific mana that you need, but which isn't really necessary, mono blue obviously. But it also gets rid of lands out of your deck, which you no longer have the ability to do. Whereas Augriel now is going to let you, it's a 1/1 flyer for 2, which isn't that great, but then you get to scry 3. So if you got any lands on the top of your decks, you're going to be wanting drawing spells, not really lands most of the time. So now you can ship those lands to the bottom. Also, I added in 2 Spiketail Drakes, which is just a 3 mana 2/2 flying. Again, it's kind of lackluster, not amazing. But what this could do is you could sacrifice it to counter any spell unless its controller pays 2. So unlike the Judge's Familiars and the Mausoleum Wanderers, which can only hit instants and sorceries, this can hit anything. So it's going to be able to stop your opponents from doing anything or hold them off for a few turns while you get to beat down for extra damage. To replace Path to Exile, I put in Vapor Snag. Now again, like, they can obviously cast the spell again, which could be bad if they're playing like a Siege Rhino, which might end up helping them in the end because they're going to be able to cast it again and do that 6-point life swing. But you get in 1 free damage. In most scenarios, you're going to be getting rid of a small creature, maybe, or the only flyer they have that can block. And it's going to make them lose 1 life, and you're going to get a free combat without having to worry about anything. And then we still have favorable winds. And I put in Coastal Piracy. Now, my problem with this card, you get to most likely draw a pretty good amount of cards, and that's going to get you steady in the game. And since you can constantly just keep getting more 1-drops, which you can cast. And the reason I didn't put in Biden of Thassa, which Biden of Thassa is the same exact card, except it has an additional ability that you can pay 2 and make your opponent attack you. And I feel like in most situations when you're playing a Flyers deck, that's not necessary because you're going to be attacking with all your Flyers in the air. They're going to be attacking you anyway since they can't block you. And Biden of Thassa is both an artifact and an enchantment, which makes it an easier target for people to destroy it, as well as it's legendary. So Coastal Piracy, you could play 2 of them and get 2 cards for every time you deal combat damage, whereas Biden of Thassa, you can only get 1 on the battlefield. But, I mean, you could play 1 Coastal Piracy and 1 Biden of Thassa if you want. And I guess that would help against, like, Surgical Extraction or something if anyone ever wanted to target that. Moving on to the next card, this is the last change, is Gravitational Shift. It's a 5-drop enchantment. Creatures with flying get +2/+0, so that's going to beef up all your guys a ton. Creatures without flying get -2/-0. So that's going to prevent a lot of damage coming your way. And you go onto the lands, just 20 islands. Easy and simple. Don't have to worry about any dual lands, fetch lands, shock lands, whatever. It's going to save you a ton of money. So if you're playing Magic Online, $2.42 to make this entire deck. On paper, $17.54. Pretty doable. And a lot of these cards, some people probably already have at home. So I mean, 40 and for I didn't check to say the price of the online for this one, but it's 49.24 for online, 147 for paper. But that's all I got for this week. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.